My name's Nathan Quinn and I'm the Head of Development at Carpentry Australia. So today our panel discussion is on balancing the scales, retention in carpentry versus recruitment. It's a topic very close to our heart, and I'm sure anyone who steps in to be part of the audience will take a lot away. Before we get into the panel discussion, we just want to say thank you to the conference sponsors and position partners at Komatsu. You can see both these companies out on the show floor. Position partners are on stand E08 and Komatsu are on stand H14. They'll also be presenting during the conference over the next few days. Remember, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions of our panelists, which you can do via the Inside Construction Expo app. So download that if you'd like to put some questions forward. So we've got a very good panel here today that's going to provide a lot of value. We're going to be talking through a number of different topics that affect the carpentry industry and keeping people inside the trade. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the CEO of Carpentry Australia, Jake MacArthur.
I might leave that one with these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Nathan. Again, thank you on behalf of Carpentry Australia to the organisers for giving us an opportunity to talk at this what is a fantastic event. It really is a privilege for us to speak at the Expo and discuss on this stage a key topic of health and safety and how we're striving for improvement in and around the industry with our focus on retention within our trade. We've got a fantastic panel of experts here today that are going to present us with some important insight into their field of work, their connection with Carpentry Australia, and the great work that we're doing to drive positive change. By keeping the hammer swinging for longer, we create better carpenters, safer workplaces, and a much higher standards across the board. So I'd like to introduce our panellists. We've got Jared Edwards first, incorrectly named Jared Stewart, but we won't look at that. So welcome, Jared. Jared's a former Director of Technical and Regulation at the VBA and was also involved with WorkSafe at one point, and he's a key policy advisor to Carpentry Australia. To his left, we have Stefan Kazakis as the CEO of Business Benchmark Group. He's a business mentor for the Carpentry Australia Business Mastery Program. Then we have Bo Bajaga from Bo Made Builds. He's a Carpentry Australia member. He's a Mastery Program participant, and it's great to have you along, Bo. Lance Petrone is an ex-AFL star. He's the CEO of the Never Alone Foundation. He's a close friend and associate of Carpentry Australia, and can you all join me in thanking and welcoming our panellists here today. Jared, I wanted to kick across to you first, not to talk about Collingwood in the final this week, which I can only hope that you guys go down in a horrible, burning smoky cloud of mess. But anyway, mate, thank you. It's probably not a good way to start. Thank you for coming here today. Hoping you can share just a bit of insight about your experience at the VBA and particularly WorkSafe, the importance of good policy making for carpenters and how we look to keep the hammer swinging for longer.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. It's great to be here this afternoon. Thanks for having us. As a good one-eyed Collingwood supporter, I can't not take the opportunity to bring an analogy in with the AFL, Collingwood and safety and policy. So not unlike the AFL, government's always looking to achieve continuous improvement by adopting good policy, not tinkering around the edges, but on significant matters that are driving better outcomes. And if we think concussion in AFL football at the moment, the AFL is doing its utmost to minimise the likelihood of having a significant crisis of our current playing group into the future. Not that there isn't some high-profile cases at the moment, but if the AFL gets its policy wrong, that leads to rule changes that are going to be ineffectual. It has the potential to disrupt the game, create confusion for umpires. And if we think about Braden Maynard and Angus Brayshaw just this recent week, other than the Collingwood Football Club, I don't think anyone had certainty about the outcome. So the policy position on concussion in the AFL at the moment is not as well defined as it needs to be, because every stakeholder had no idea what was going on. Same in the building industry. If government's setting policy that is uninformed and that in fact has a negative impact on effective ways of working, it's not great policy. As I mentioned earlier, avoiding tinkering around the edges and being focused on what are the significant changes and issues that we want to see happen, that's where policy should come from. And engagement with the stakeholders, being practitioners, builders, carpenters. Without that, policymakers are not going to make informed decisions, which ultimately can lead to impacts and impediments to great construction work, good carpentry outcomes, and sadly lead to carpenters leaving the industry through frustration, or building works being less than desirable because a policy hasn't taken into consideration the way in which the industry actually operates.
So Jared, we've done some work together on trade licensing and registration in Victoria. That's a key topic, and our position is that that while we don't want it to be restrictive of getting guys coming through the trade, we do want to maintain that bar at a higher standard. Can you talk a little bit maybe about what we've done around trade licensing and registration, and maybe how that links into again that retention of trade long term?
Yeah, sure. For those that are interested in the policy position, there has been draft regulation out for public comment in relation to licensing and registration of trades, with carpentry being the first cab off the rank. CA's position is around ensuring that qualifications, experience and accountability are matched to the capability of the carpenter, and making sure that the categories of licensing or registration provide for genuine opportunities for progression in a controlled way that doesn't see the carpenter push beyond his or her capability from a technical perspective, but also from the critical aspect of operating a business. I'm sure many carpenters, like other trades, aspire to be the builder, and that would seem to be the only pathway to becoming a contract holder or to be in charge of your own destiny. Carpentry Australia's position is around establishing licensing and registration pathways that enable the carpenter to not only be in control of their own destiny, to take greater accountability for the building works that they're responsible for on site, but also to develop the fundamental skills that mean they're not going to go broke, they're not going to fall foul of a regulatory obligation that sits upon a business, and that they can keep swinging the hammer for longer because they find themselves operating a sustainable business and aren't forced to step away from carpentry in order to progress in their own professional careers.
This is a huge point, and something obviously that drives a lot behind what we do, mate. It's a good segue. I'll get a really quick tip for you. Are you confident, first, before I move across to Stefan, are you confident that Collingwood will get a win on tomorrow?
I'm still haunted by the preliminary final in 2021, I think, GWS. So yes, confident.
Okay, all right. Well, as I said, good segue. Stefan Kazakis is really a guru, well, not only in our industry, but a guru in business as far as I'm concerned. I've had the privilege of working closely with Stefan to deliver some really important results back into industry about helping to develop carpenters in their own business, and obviously helping to transfer from carpenter, qualified business owner, and then through into becoming a builder. Stefan, can you give us some insight into what you're doing at the moment and how that relates to keeping carpenters in the trade, keeping it for longer and keeping the hammer swinging for longer?
Yeah, thanks, Jake, and I also think Collingwood will be winning tomorrow, just to put that on the record, and it was the 2019 preliminary final. Yeah. So my, our association with Carpentry Australia, and more so regarding the individuals that sort of go through their apprenticeship, are working for someone, eventually decide to step up and step into, I guess, business ownership, and in fairness, the skills and tools, Jake, to start a business are very different to the skills and tools needed to grow a business. So if you think about that distinction, that line in the sand, that as individuals we say we want to own our own business, and then everything that comes with that. So one thing, it takes a lot of courage to lead something. It takes even more courage to scale something. So our work as it relates to how we support carpenters, operators, who go on the journey to be business owners and absolutely back themselves in, not with blind faith, but with the ability to work on the process, working on the clarity that gives you the confidence as to which part of the market do you want to play in, which part of the market do you want to make an impact in, and that's about building the niches. Whether you want to be building decks in the backyard as your choice of ideal job, or building residential or commercial properties, or doing fit outs, whatever you decide to be your chosen job, then there's that piece about what is the ideal margin that I can say yes to and learn to say no to. Because one of the key things, Jake, just before I pass over to you, is the more clarity you have about the ideal job at the ideal margin to the ideal customer, the better the chance to go on a journey that takes you from being the best carpenter to the best owner, leading men and women on a journey to something that's amazing.
Yep. And it's a big mind shift change, particularly for carpenters, having a trade background, to then wrap their head around the requirements of the next stage in their journey. And obviously you're a key part of our offering at Carpentry Australia, and delivering not only the messages but on how to do things, or I guess the rhetoric behind what's needed, but you're actually working with the guys hand in hand to take them through that journey, which I think is it's fantastic, mate. So I will, being conscious of the time, and I'm going to come back to you shortly, but we've got I think a fantastic example of in Bo, a guy who is a member of Carpentry Australia, who's been involved in some of the things that Carpentry Australia does, and particularly has come through the Business Mastery program with you. Bo, can I just throw across to you, and can you talk a bit about your experience in the industry, your connection with Carpentry Australia, with Stefan at BBG in the Mastery program, and can you talk about maybe humble beginnings through to where you're at the moment?
Yeah, well, I did my carpentry apprenticeship with a architectural domestic builder. Moved through that till I was about 21, and then decided to just go out on my own as a carpenter. Pretty much did everything myself. Worked as a two-man band, me and an apprentice. Slowly working towards my DBU, which I have now, which I've had for about 3 years. Did a bit of work on my DBU in the first year, and then started to hit some roadblocks with that.
So just to explain to everybody what a DBU is.
A domestic licensed builder. Can do anything up to 3 stories. You've got to provide contracts and insurance for your work, so there's a bit of accountability with that. So moved, that first year with my domestic license, hit a few roadblocks, probably quoting for the wrong people, hiring the wrong people, stuff around those lines. Met Stefan through one of my friends, was introduced to his team, and the last probably 2 years with him has really shown, how a business is supposed to be run, and how to run it, how to run a team, how to develop your team, not only, get them to work for you, but how to develop their skills so that you do retain them in the industry, and they're not just going to work every day doing the same old thing. Holding them accountable, making sure that they're, developing their skills that they want to achieve in their career through us, BoMade, which obviously develops some sense of attachment to us, I hope, that retains them with us, because good carpenters and good apprentices are pretty hard to find at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, I guess one of the challenges that we face around the retention space is, and I'm interested to get your thoughts, quite often, and there seems to be consistency in how this rolls out in the life cycle or the journey of a carpenter, is if things don't work and you run out of answers and you don't know where to go to, the guys will tend to look back at the industry as being the problem, rather than looking at maybe their ability or their skill set as far as business goes. So I guess if in your instance, and I take my hat off to you, and understanding a bit more about your journey, you've sort of taken big steps in going to that next stage and asking questions and listening and then taking on that advice. But if you didn't have good, clear direction, what do you think the outcome might have been, or what do you see out in the...
If I didn't have the clear direction that, like, I have the help of Stefan and you guys, I'd probably be going around the same circle I was 2 years ago. As I said, just pricing jobs that you not necessarily want to do, attracting the wrong client, I guess, that is going to give you a hard time in the process of the build. You want to attract the people that are wanting to work with you, as well as us work for them. So, you kind of get that good balance. That if you get that good balance, the project runs smoothly, everything runs smoothly. So, it's good to have someone to ask questions, and if you're not unsure on things as well. So it's good to, like, I never thought I would have people to ask about business and stuff. I thought for that first year I was just doing it all on my own. So it's just good to know, hey, is this a good idea, or is this not a good idea?
Now, another good segue, but I'm not going to use it straight away as far as being never alone. Mate, the other thing that I wanted to point out, and you were at one of the Carpentry Australia functions recently, and I saw you had a good young crew, similar sort of vibe as yourself. Obviously enthusiastic, loved what they do, and a great positive culture. I just wanted to make the point that the importance of you learning the right thing and going on your journey, and what I saw in that in that moment is that you're taking that skill set and passing it down the line to the next generation of carpenters. They will be you in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years time. So it's a really big part of what Carpentry Australia is here to do is plug that hole and ensure that that message is transferring through, that we're building the level up, and we're building the level up. So mate, I credit to you. I think you're doing a fantastic job. So next I wanted to move across to you, Lance, and I will take that segue about Never Alone. Lance, you're an ex-AFL star, and you've got quite a captivating story. You're the founder of the Never Alone Foundation, and we've made a connection. It's a really important topic across all trades, something that's near and dear to our hearts as far as health and well-being. So if you can maybe talk a bit about your story, where you've come from, where you're at, and the Never Alone Foundation. I
appreciate it. Thanks, Jake. And to be known as a star in your eyes is amazing. It's a very humbling experience. So I appreciate that. I started the foundation 10 years ago. Based on lived experience, and we all have a story. And this is what the sort of the message we try to get across to a lot of people is that everyone has a story to be able to tell. It's just depending on how comfortable they are actually telling that story, and that's not just from the devastation and the challenges that come with one's mental health, but it's also talking about the successes of life as well. We're not comfortable in telling that and actually sort of owning that sort of part of the story and being able to sort of ride that roller coaster that becomes with. So, I did play AFL for a long time, back in the old days where we, wear tight jumpers and tight shorts, back in that era. But, my story, like many others, started back from when I was in school. The identity process that I was working through at school, not belonging, disconnection, disillusion of life and where it was all going. I was bullied at school, the harassment that come with all that sort of stuff. A whole range of mental health challenges came from that position. But, being a part of a sport is what saved my life. For me, I was lucky enough that footy became my sort of chosen career and pathway to where I was going. But then, I like to use a lot of the analogies that we use with team sport and in terms of businesses as well. It's about, obviously, and this is why we're called the Never Alone Foundation now, right? So as much as we talk about the team and the aspect of group and harmony between the connection between our people, it's still the you that needs to do it. Right, so you can drive the agenda and the value of you as a person as much as you want, but you still need your people around you to make it work. So, and I think from the work that we do at the foundation in trying to create more awareness of that journey and what that path looks like for a lot of people, it's still an ongoing conversation. and it's a ton of work that needs to be done in the future, because we still live in a world that just from generational bias in terms of the experience that we go through, in terms of having been in the football world, and talking here about the fact that 98% of the people in this conference here, in this expo here, are male, and the male-dominated world that we live in. There's still the synergies between the football world that I lived in and the world that we're here in this expo is males still don't talk and accept the full acceptance of being able to talk about emotions or hardship or challenges that come through with our life, right? And that is what is holding us back. The fact is we're trying to create more inclusion in our programs through gender roles and gender getting female genders that are getting into the industry. We talk about the same thing with football and professional sports in that way. Is the fact that there's still a generational bias, the fact that they're not as up to the standard as we have led to believe, and that is not against anyone, but that's just the way that it's been connected, right? So there's more work around the fact that becoming more inclusive in the the gender experience. I think space, not just from a mental health component, but from a business component, from sport, from all these things, is actually creating more acceptance around the conversations that can be had. So as a male-dominated industry and life that I've lived in, and from my dad's experience, my dad has bipolar, severe anxieties, on suicide watch. The experiences that I have, having lived with mental illness through anxiety, depression, being a drug addict, had multiple suicide attempts over a period of time. We still live in a space that the conversations we are applauded by being able to talk about it. The problem that we have with that is that becomes a fear factor for a lot of people in being able to share that story and share that experience, to the point where, well, if I'm actually going to create more attention on me by actually sharing my story, I don't want that. Because when you're living with the devastation and the challenges that go through with your head and in the moment, you don't want that attention. You just want the general normalised conversation piece. So, the work that we're looking at with between Never Alone Foundation and CA is to create a more accessible resource and information and connection to the conversation, so that we're not waiting for shit to hit the fan pretty much before we do something about it. In the carpentry and construction industry, the rate of mental health incident is higher than the average generalised community aspect, right? So we talk about that as an aspect to say, okay, why is it? It's not about treating the effect. What's the cause behind all of this? We talk about the physical strains on the industry, the demands, the physical components, the lack of guidance and counselling and understanding of your pathway, because the pressures that come with that are all hitting at our identity. So the work that we're trying to do, and obviously the work that Carpentry Australia is doing, and why we like it so much, is the fact that it's actually creating a pathway for people to move forward and understand their role and what they look like, right? Because not everyone is meant to be a business owner. Not everyone, I'll talk back to the footy world, not everyone was meant to be the star midfielder, right? No one was meant to be the full forward kicking 10 goals a game. Not everyone's, but it's understanding our role in what we want our path to look like, that we can actually make this work together. So not that my agenda is being blinded by the fact that I need to be this. This is what I can be, and this is how I'm going to get there. And we talk about with the mental health component is the fact that we really want people to have more accessible resource and information. And then if shit does hit the fan, because it is going to, that we know the avenues of support that we can get there.
Yeah. Mate, and the key part, our key role there is normalising it, acceptance, and then obviously providing a platform to help those, the connection provides a platform for our guys to be able to navigate their way, like you say, through those issues, hopefully ahead of time. We're missing one guest today, but I did want to touch on a story that sort of links some of the mental health and mental health, safety and well-being together with policy making, together with business development, and understanding your role as a business owner in the carpentry space. And we had recently an issue brought to our attention, a female in the workplace who just wants to go about her business, and there is obviously the need or a focus on getting more women into trades, and it's a good thing. We support it and do everything we can do to involve ourselves in that untapped resource. But what happened was there was an issue on site. This particular member of ours was uncomfortable with the situation. She was a leading hand on this particular job, and she was made to feel uncomfortable in her workplace. And we talked at depth about what happened, and she was clearly frustrated and making the linkages. From a mental health perspective, from a women in trades perspective, but what it also, and I guess I pushed and challenged her a little bit around this understanding that stigma that revolves around our industry, heavily male dominated, and the protectiveness of that space. Now, you touched on before, footy saved your life. So you had that tie that when you finish football and that safety is eroded or is taken away, having that protection.
That's the connection word, right? So the connection to it and the connection to your process. So for me, as I said, footy saved my life, but footy also almost killed me as well. So the pressures and expectations and all the things that come around that environment. And we were talking before, Steph, around the cultural shift that we need to make in this space, right? So whether it be from business or sport or wherever you're at, and even family life, the cultural shift that we are now having to engage in and understand. It's, we talk about policy. Policy is only sometimes not worth the paper that it's written on, right? It's about the action and the engagement of that policy and the processes that come with that to make it work.
You're exactly right. And I want to touch on that because coming back to this particular story, on the outset it looked like an issue of acceptance just of women in trade. But the challenge that I put back to this particular member of ours is, the male, it was an older male that was involved in, sort of just being untoward and making her feel uncomfortable. But the building site is his safe space, okay, and he just doesn't know how to deal with it. So what happened as a result of it was there was no action. She didn't know how to deal with it. She spoke to her friends on site. They didn't know how to deal with it. She didn't follow up with her boss. She just thought she had to get along with it. Now, no change happened as a result of that. So from our perspective, we've made progression through the construction industry now, and there's provision in place to actions that should have been taken by her employer, policies and procedures in place to be able to handle that, to support her through a problem. But they weren't at that stage, right? So it was just a really interesting insight of, and again, the role that CA is here to play is to bring all of those things together. So that her employer understands his responsibility to her. She understands her avenue to deal with the situation, so she can actively deal with it. And there's an ability for that individual to learn that, hey, come along and have your safe space, but understand there's a line and you need to work within the boundaries with what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah, it's that cultural shift that comes, right? So it might have been his safe space, but the reason potentially that person was pushing that agenda or that behaviour onto somebody else that he was fearful of, so his safe space was not being protected, so his space, that's how we sort of dealt with it. And that's not just from that in one individual, and that happens all the time, and everyone does it. We talk about the fact, and I say this a lot, where we feel safest, we perform best. Okay, and that's the why. In terms of our psychosocial safety, we perform best when we're in that space. And I know that from a professional sports world. Where I felt safest is where I performed best, and I performed best on the MCG. Right, that was my space. But where did I feel safe when I stepped off the MCG at that time? I didn't feel safe, so I wasn't performing in terms of where I was at with my mental health, my social health, my physical health. I wasn't in that space. But when I was on field, I was allowed to feel safest to play and perform, right? So you're talking about when you have more people in that challenge and more people not feeling safe, their factor of fear is what causing the detrimental behaviours in a group, and that then puts a lot of pressure. We talk about people like Bo, who is taking that journey to be what he wants to be in terms of a business owner in the industry and having his people and having his team. So he becomes the coach but still feeling the play. Yeah. So this is obviously the work that Steph's been able to understand. How do you actually become both and understand the factors around actually creating the behaviours to make sure that your people are still your product. So as good as you might be at your job, your people are still your product. And if you can't invest in your people and make sure that cultural shift is working, your performance in your business is going to go down. But with more, we can understand how that works, and I'm sure Bo will be able to understand how this works from his experience here and making that work.
Yeah, thank you for that, mate. And Bo, again, guys, you just keep rolling the segues out. It works really, really well. Very easy for me. Bo, Lance is talking about a safe space. I want to understand how, given what you know now, go back 2 years, and we touched on that when we caught up recently, where you were before and where you are now. How safe and confident do you feel off the back of what you've learned along the way? How safe is the building space for you, and how confident are you in taking on the world in what you do right now?
I'm 100% confident in my pricing now, for sure, after working with Stefan and making sure that's right. So that's probably the number one factor at the moment, knowing that what I'm pricing is going to be that at the end. How to deal with it if something does come up during the construction with the clients, or something that we couldn't have foreseen as well. But I want to touch base on as what I felt as an apprentice when I was working for my old boss. Was it a great experience? And look, to be honest, when I finished, I just wanted to get out of there. And that's why I started by myself, because I saw no future.
When you say it wasn't a great experience, can you elaborate? What sort of things?
Overtime hours, not getting paid for it, rubbish culture, just saw no future there, no desire to want to keep going, I guess. And I was like, you know what, I can do this for myself, let's give it a go. And that's how I relate now with my boys. I treat them the way I wanted to be treated as an apprentice. Make sure they're happy, make sure that we're giving them development plans for 3, 6, 9 months to where they want to be in 12 months, I guess, as a goal-setting stepping stone for them. We make sure they agree with it, sign it off before we accept it, and then we hold them accountable to it. And then they see the progression as they're going through their career, and they get to where they want to be, and it's as well as where I want them to be within the time frame that the company needs them to be.
And mate, I get to see firsthand your confidence level in what you do, and we've got the light and the dark of what works and what doesn't. And also, you've made a great point. What happens if we get it wrong? What happens is, there was the opportunity to lose you from the industry, all of your experience, and all of your opportunity that you bring to the construction industry. So it's a really important point. And Steph, I just want to come back to you quickly if I can, and again, maybe you can touch on that. What happens if they get it wrong? What's the result? You've seen in business what happens.
Yeah, so just touching on Lance's point, business and or your career or life, it's a people thing, and embracing the journey with a no judgment approach affords you the opportunity to continuously be curious. Build the confidence to ask more questions, and if we enable and empower what we can control as leaders and future leaders to create that space, then that is the safe space. And whether you're a business owner or belong to a team that's going somewhere where you are enabled, you are empowered, you are listened to, you are not judged, that is the some people would say that's the ultimate, but in fairness, that is the only way. So in our journey, and we travel the world, ensuring that what we do and the frameworks we put into our programs, and more importantly, the journeys our young owners of businesses that become champions in their space follow, is it's important to have assertive leadership. You've got to have strong leadership, but strong is not what it was 40 years ago. Strong is about being really clear about what is the issue and being soft on the person to bring them through, and collectively everyone's better, right? So no judgment. Number two, it's important to have a destination. It's important to have something that looks and feels like this is where we're going. We, not I. So utilising the we language, utilising the ability to say, hey, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but this is where we're going and I want you to come along on a journey with me. And then having the piece around transparency and honesty, which is culture, right? I mean, culture is one of those overused terms, in my opinion. Culture is about the ability to communicate. In and out, side to side, no judgment. Fourth thing, having an action plan where people know how it is that they are dependent upon. Dependency is a as humans, to be dependent upon is such a phenomenal privilege, to be dependent upon, not to be judged. And then there's about support risk taking. Now, I'm not talking about risk at a health and safety level, get to the top of the roof and jump off and see if you can bounce back up. I'm talking about support risk taking where you allow people to speak their truth, no judgment. And then the last piece, Jake, which affords, in my opinion, and what I see over 30 years in doing what I've had an amazing privilege to do with my team and Carpentry Australia and what we see there, it's 100% inclusion. That's the role of a leader. The role of the leader to say everyone here is included in where we're going. And then 100% involvement, allowing the individual to participate. There are three key factors as to why people join a team or why people stay on a team. And this goes across all avenues in life. The first and most important reason why people join or stay on a team is because they belong to something. The word belong is a very powerful word. They belong to something that's going somewhere. There's no money down on that one. That's an attitude and a decision you make as a leader. The second most important reason why people join or stay is because there's gratitude and appreciation. No money down. The third reason is they are paid appropriately, and that is important, right? So I just feel, Bo is an example of an individual who had a dream, who realised that there were elements of his dream that needed some, again, additional skills, additional tools, no judgment. And he goes on his journey, and dare me say, Bo's journey is not finished, it's just started. And the important thing about Bo, just listening to him sharing here today and the intimate understanding I have and we have of Bo and his particular journey, which is not unique, is that he is more excited about bringing people with him than he is about it's all about me. So power to you, Bo, and what you do.
Awesome. Thanks, Steph. Final point, Jared, I'm going to come across to you. We come here today at the expo where it's about vertical construction off the back of an announcement by the government to really really drive construction in Victoria. Some serious numbers and work to do there. There's a skills shortage at the moment. We recognise the importance of recruitment, but I guess to get your final thoughts, the recruitment versus retention, where do you see that? How important is it to get our policy right in both areas?
It's critical. Talking to Nathan earlier, he was suggesting anecdotally that the numbers of carpenters leaving the industry is outstripping the number of carpenters joining the industry. So if we don't get that right in the context of understanding why it is our carpenters are leaving the sector, then finding the right solution is never going to happen. So as much of our effort needs to be put on ensuring pathways for career progression, pathways for supported coaching, training and development in the areas that we've heard this afternoon, is equally important to keeping good carpenters, keeping that hammer swinging for longer, as it is to attracting new entrants into the market through skills pushes and initiatives around training, development and securing future apprentices.
Thank you, mate. So I guess, do we have anybody here that's involved in policy making or involved with carpentry, Jesse? Not to point the camera or finger at you, mate. But I guess any questions? We've heard some really important messages from each of our panellists today. But I wanted to throw over to the audience if there's any questions that any of you might have for one of our panellists. Hang on, mate. Bear with me.
Thanks, Jake. My question's for you, Jared. If there was a governing body for carpenters in Australia, what would that sort of look like?
Firstly, because of the Federation of States, each state and territory is responsible for the statute and regulations for construction. So there is a requirement under our Commonwealth arrangements for each state and territory to have responsibility. So it's probably not plausible that there would be a national regulator of carpentry. But the importance is around having seamless integration between states and territories built on model legislation that enables registration and licensing in one jurisdiction to be equally recognised and respected across borders, so that the administrative burden on a tradesperson or a business is not unreasonable, and that the consumer can be confident that they're getting an outcome that meets their expectations no matter what jurisdiction they're in. So I'd say it's less about creating a national body and more around creating a greater degree of cohesion across each of the states and territories, so that the common legislation, when we have a national construction code, but if you look at the state and territory amendments, it occupies more than the national construction code itself. So state and territory governments have to let go of their parochial position on things and look to the greater collective good. And it's where bodies like Carpentry Australia...
I was just about to say, let us not forget the body that is Carpentry Australia,
No,
which
it's,
is exactly,
you know,
we're here for exactly that reason.
Carpentry Australia, the Master Builders, HIA, there are many membership agencies that are facilitating the voice of carpenters, and it's the carpenters who have to deal with the decisions of policymakers, and that has a potential often to derail the way in which you work. So the ability to feed back through a membership body like Carpentry Australia is critical to drive consistency across states, territories, the National Construction Code, and the way in which each respective regulator regulates the industry.
Thanks, Jesse.
Good question.
Any other questions from anybody? Yeah. Well, Nathan, do you want to talk to some of the training that's offered in addition to some of the work that Stefan does directly with the guys? I'll let Nathan share about some of the training.
So Carpentry Australia over the last couple of years has been getting a lot of input from different members as to what's required, and there's requests that come through. We've got Charlie and Matt in the office with us, and we're consistently getting inquiries, and what that's resulted in is we've formulated a development pathway. So essentially where it's going is we're utilising all the information that you've heard here today, like Lance is involved in the development of putting your processes and policies in place, making sure you've got the right culture in your team, which is a fundamental component of your time with CA, and that's going to be part of the progression in changing the future. We've got people working in women in trades and how to actually speak up and make sure, like Jake mentioned about, that you've got your systems and procedures in place to address those issues. So it's not just a broad conversation, there's action involved. We've got a series of different support workshops we're building at the moment, the risk management side that ties in very well with the topic matter today, that looks at the various avenues that are risks to a business. Obviously, Stefan plays a big role in that. And also, there's other avenues there too, not only to grow the business through Stefan, but also in terms of building your networks, building your relationships. And that ties into your comment, Jesse, about the member events. So we've got events in Sydney and Melbourne where sole contractors or sole traders can network with bigger builders to allow their workflow to increase and to provide more opportunity. And we've got different guests who come along to those sorts of things to assist and provide value, because a lot of the time, as Lance said, it's not just in terms of emotion and getting that support, but a lot of people are afraid to ask for help. So when we facilitate those conversations and get those discussions going, we're amazed at how many people are actually speaking up and getting involved. And I think I commend Bo as well for having the bravery to step up and get the help, because I think it'd be a huge shame if you stepped out of the industry and the impact that would have had on your future team members. But yeah, Steph, I'll let you jump across as well with the business side of things too.
Yeah, so Jesse, I guess the availability through Carpentry Australia to support, which rhymes with training, can only continuously be fulfilled with members such as yourself making recommendations, speaking up as to, hey, this is good, but it would be better if, and then, understanding that your voice or your suggestions will be heard is very important. And, Carpentry Australia is a less than 10 years. How long is the... Yeah, so, it's a fairly... it's a new but relevant. See, there's older associations, and I'm okay to say this, there's older associations that are a little stuck in the way that it was, and I'm going to call it as it is. The boys' club is the boys' club. The Carpentry Australia way of doing business is about being in the moment, agile, nimble, and fresh when it comes to, okay, how do we continue to add value? Very different to the old boys and the way they do it.
Thank you, Stefan. So I think it's been a ripping panel, and I hope everybody's got a lot out of today. It has been an enjoyable experience. Thank you to, I will leave it there. Thank you to the organisers of Inside Construction 2023. It is a fantastic event and opportunity to have forums like this, to spearhead collaboration in the industry. That's creating better pathways for today and for the guys of tomorrow. Thank you for the opportunity to present some of our relevant initiatives in driving positive change through Carpentry Australia and our channels. Nathan Quinn, our Head of Development at CA, he made a fantastic contribution on behalf of CA and our members when he spoke in depth to 3AW last night, and he did a fantastic job. Well done, mate, and well done on putting today together, and to you too, Maddie. And Charlie, wherever you've gone, good job. A huge thank you to our panellists. I know each of these guys personally, and they are experts in their field, but really resonate with, I think, the carpentry culture and the Carpentry Australia culture of first and foremost just being good humans. I'm so grateful for you guys to taking time out of your day and getting involved with what the event's all about. Thanks to the audience and Jesse for getting involved. That was good, mate. I appreciate that. My name's Jake MacArthur. It's been a pleasure being here today, and I'll wrap up by urging everyone to get behind Carpentry Australia and all the powerful things that we're doing to create positive change, making our industry better for all involved by keeping the hammer swinging for longer.